I remember when he was first diagnosed, and we called in favors to kind of our entire village of people that were neurologists or were pediatric oncologists, just trying to figure that thing out. And I remember my gut thought was, we have to stop all sugar. Like, cause I knew tumors feed off of sugar. And I remember calling, it was a friend of a friend who was a pediatric, like, hemonc doctor. And I told her, this is a week into finding out that he had a tumor. And I said, should we stop all sugar? And she said, no. And I remember the fear that was filled. She said, you don't want to do anything at this time that could possibly make that tumor angry. So just keep the status quo until you have surgery. And at that moment I thought, okay, I can't think about anything else except him surviving surgery at this point. So I took it off the plate of worries at that time. But it was always this nagging thought in the back of my mind that I wasn't thinking ketogenic, I was just thinking, how do we need to stop all sugar? What is that gonna look like? It's so taboo when you talk about children and food. Everybody has an opinion on that. And it really, the consensus was, at that point, let him eat what he wants to eat, was honestly what we were told. And I think back now that fall where we were watching and waiting and we had such significant growth, they put him on really high dose steroids coming off of surgery. And if you look at his pictures, I mean, he's a toddler, so he's got cute chubby rolls and things like that, but his face just ballooned up. They put them on high dose steroids coming out of surgery because they're so concerned with brain swelling, is really what it comes down to. But we know that high dose steroids raise your glucose, they give you an insatiable appetite. All of these things happen. And so even though we were eating unprocessed foods, I mean, he would burn through loaves of Dave's Killer bread and butter. And he was a toddler too, and potatoes and all of these other things. Luckily, he did eat avocado and eggs and all of those things. But I think back, his glucose must have just been skyrocketing, and that tumor was already angry from being worked on in that surgery, that's why we had such rapid growth coming back out of it. So yes, discouraged from acquaintances who were doctors. Again, when he started chemo, I point blank asked our oncologists, like, what about a low sugar diet? What about this? And they said, no, let him be a kid. Chemo is gonna be hard enough. And it was only when I kind of put myself back in the driver's seat and I made the decision that we were going to do this. My friends at Max Love Project gave me a 10-page annotated bibliography of clinical research about metabolic therapies for cancer. And I will say, our oncology group was 5 oncologists together. Made it really frustrating as a parent perspective. Each week we'd see a different doctor, because then they'd all meet at the end, so they argued, well, you get all of our collective experience. But what it really does is it prevents you from forming a bond with a specific doctor who you feel is invested in your child. But even within that group of 5 oncologists, there were 2 that I knew when I finally worked up the courage to tell them we were going to do a ketogenic diet, I wasn't asking permission, and I didn't do that, but I wanted to inform them because I thought that was important for blood work, for additional tests I was going to be asking for. I waited till the right moment when the one doctor I knew would be more open to it. We saw him when he rounded. And I remember handing him this document and saying, I'm not asking for permission, but I respect you enough to show you why we're doing this. And it was kind of a ballsy move on my part, but I really so firmly believed in what we were doing, and I knew it was a way to reach him in a language he would understand. And so he took it. He actually was really good and said, well, I've heard about it with regards to children with epilepsy. I'm not really sure about this cancer connection. But he took the material, and the next week when we were there for Fusion, he actually stopped by the Fusion area and was so excited. He was like, I read through everything. Wow, there are like all of these clinical trials going on. This is so exciting. And I was like, yeah, this is what I'm saying. And he, over the course, because we did finish up chemotherapy, over that course, he would ask us, are you guys still on it? But then he would bring up things like, well, it's really expensive to eat that way, isn't it? And I was like, not really. Do you know that you can get 4 packs of Kerrygold butter at Costco? I mean, just it's as expensive as you make it. And I realized how many myths are so surrounding this diet and how Clinicians are just people too. They're not gods. They fall into reading the front of People magazine of this is a fad diet. They believe all of that hype too. And it really is I feel such a personal responsibility as like a parent advocate to help educate those doctors as well. Because ultimately, I'm enough of a rebel that I was willing to go against the grain to do this, but so many parents aren't. And also coming from such a place of privilege. I'm white, I have 2 master's degrees, I could take off 2 years of my life from work to be with our child while he went through treatment. I spoke the same language as my doctors. I have all of these, I was privileged in this horrific situation, and that's why I feel such a passionate calling to share our story and to help these families, because how on earth are you gonna have the faith in yourself to change diet when you don't speak the same language as your doctor, when you're working 2, 3 jobs just to stay in your apartment? I mean, childhood cancer does not care what color you are, what your socioeconomic status is. It doesn't care about any of those things. It does not discriminate. And that's why it's up to parents to be able to move that needle forward.